To drive a Mercedes-Benz E-Class sedan is to let the world know that you have your wits about you. Oh, sure, there are a couple AMG versions if you want to prove that Sensibility doesn't run the show entirely, but this makes a statement about your strict adherence to common sense. And the updates it got for 2021, yeah, they only make it an even more rational choice. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. To me, there is nothing pompous about the E-Class. It's just plain sensible, and there are lots of other good cars it competes with. You've got the Audi A6, the BMW 5 Series, the Genesis G80, and the Volvo S90, all perfectly fine. But with the exception of that last one, none of them are quite as renowned as this for being so well reasoned and logical. And for 2021, the E-Class did get some styling updates, but you wouldn't really know by looking at it, especially from afar. Looks the same as the car that was introduced about 5 years ago, but I don't have a problem with that. And more importantly, it's what you can't see that's changed, including what's powering this E450 I'm driving. Now, it still uses a 3-liter 6-cylinder engine, but instead of twin turbos and a V configuration, it's a straight 6, and it's got a single turbocharger. But more importantly, Mercedes has also added a mild hybrid system. Now, straight 6s, they're notoriously smooth and balanced, but that mild hybrid system makes it even more so. Now, that really is what inline 6s are known for, balance and smoothness, and there's tons of that here. Interestingly, output is the same as the V6 that this motor replaces, so you get 362 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. The only difference of note is that all that torque, it hits just a little bit sooner. So it comes online at 1600 RPM instead of 1800 revs like last time. But again, going back to that mild hybrid system, you have the electric motor and the 48 volt setup, and it gives you pulses of electrons under acceleration, and you can feel it. There's also this gauge, and you can watch it react. The other cool thing is it'll coast when you let off the gas. The engine will shut off sometimes, and it does help you save fuel, at least a little bit anyways. Now, I went for my evaluation drive that I do with every vehicle I review. It's about 200 kilometers, a little bit more than that, and I averaged 8 liters per 100 kilometers in this thing. That's only a little bit worse than I did in the Honda Accord a few months ago. Now, granted, this is premium grade gas, and that thing burns regular, but it's still pretty impressive, especially when you consider that this is a bigger, heavier car, and it has all-wheel drive. No, it's not going to help you save all kinds of fuel, but that's not too bad, and every little bit helps, especially with the smoothness of this powertrain. And here's the other thing about that. Well, it does make it pretty quick. No, it's not an AMG, but it'll still do the sprint to 100 kilometers an hour in a little less than 5 seconds. And if you don't think that's quick enough, there is something wrong with you. It gets up and goes. Not much turbo lag either. Very nice motor. But you know, really, this isn't a car that's built for short bursts of speed. It's made for long distance cruising, and I have to say, this is one of the most comfortable cars this side of 6 figures I have ever driven in my life. Now, this one doesn't even have the optional air suspension, and ride quality is just phenomenal. It cruises around like a baby S-Class, and that really is what it is. It uses adaptive dampers to keep things calm, cool, and collected. They respond to road conditions as well as how you're driving. So if you are pushing it, the ride will firm up just a little bit, but it really does prioritize comfort over everything else. Now, here's some other stuff that you can't see that's new for 2021. Updates to the advanced driver aids. Now, they are optional. You got to pay about $3 grand to get the package that includes them, but they are well worth it in my books. I'm talking about the adaptive cruise and the lane keep assist in particular. I've driven the system before, it was good, but it's great now with these updates, and that includes a system that allows you to kind of let it do its own thing, but you do have to keep your hands on the steering wheel. Now's a great time to remind you guys, there is no such thing as a self-driving car on the market, but I really like Mercedes' approach to semi-autonomy, and the updates for this year just help because there are now sensors in the steering wheel. Instead of you having to provide the occasional input so it knows you're paying attention, well, what it does is it uses these sensors to make sure your hands are on the wheel, and trust me, it's pretty quick to yell at you if they aren't. I dig the way it's set up. It'll even stop the car if you continue to ignore the warnings. It is very cool the way it operates. But like I said, it's just very cool, and I'm gonna go ahead and set the adaptive cruise here. Again, I have to keep my hands on the wheel, but if I kind of loosen my grip, I can feel it guiding me along, and that includes around bends on the highway. You get this little green indicator, and that tells you, yes, your hands are on the wheel. And once you let your hands off, eventually it will go red and it'll start to warn you. So again, I really like that. But the way it works is I'm just kind of feathering the wheel here. I'm not actually providing inputs. It's doing it for me. It is so cool. It's just so relaxed. It takes that stress out, especially out on the highway. If you're doing some big cross-Canada road trip, having a system like this is really beneficial. Now, a transport truck has just moved in front of me. It is gonna slow down, but all I have to do is activate my signal. Just change lanes on its own. Again, I've kept my hand on the wheel, but it's very cool that it does that. Yes, it is kind of gimmicky, but it does take some of the stress out of highway driving, and I think that's where systems like this really come in handy. I'm gonna go ahead and move back into that center lane, and again, it's taking care of it on its own. It's kept a safe distance from that truck I've gone around. Now I'm slowing down with this truck in front of me again. It's just a very nice and balanced system. It's not jerky with any of the brake or throttle inputs, any of the lane keeping. It's just nice and true. It's very smooth, and that is the key to this system. There's tons of other tech in here too, including these massive screens on the dash that are new for 2021. Now, both of them span 12.3 inches each, and the one on the right, that's your infotainment screen, obviously, and that is touch responsive, but that makes this little control pad down here on the console absolutely redundant. I'm not a big fan. And then the other thing is the steering wheel has this little controller too. The difference with that GLA class that I just reviewed and you've already watched is that that thing at least was this little thumb pad that was really like the kind that you got on an old BlackBerry. Whereas this, I just find it a lot more finicky, and the volume control is touch as well. So you slide your thumb, but then the rest of them are buttons. So it does make it kind of complicated and a little bit jerky with your motions. I just can't control it as much. And then the same goes with the ones over here on the left-hand side. You have another one, and that's how you reconfigure this gauge cluster. That's cool. But then also, if you want to increase or decrease your speed with the adaptive cruise engaged, you have to slide your thumb here. If you click the plus or minus, that goes up by increments of 10 kilometers an hour. If you want to go up one at a time, you have to slide your thumb up and down. Again, it's just very finicky, but it is cool that you can reconfigure the gauge cluster as well as this head-up display. It's optional, it's part of the tech pack, and I really like it. This has got to have some of the most information I have ever seen on a head-up display, and you can choose how much you want to display, or if you want to keep it simple, the choice is yours. It's totally up to you, but it's cool how you can pull it up, and it's full color. It's very bright, even at nighttime. It gives you a great view of all kinds of relevant info. And now jumping back to the infotainment system, well, you can pull up all kinds of cool stuff on here as well, like the navigation system that has an augmented reality function, or Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but Mercedes still hasn't figured out how to have those systems work in this widescreen format, so you get this dead space on either side of the screen that is just so terrible, especially because Kia gives you the same screen size with a full widescreen setup. Anyway, there's also a very cool voice control system so you can tell the car what you want to do or where you want to go. Hey Mercedes,
How can I help?
take me to Starbucks. And now I get this full list of Starbucks locations. I don't know, it's just handy, especially if you're out on the road and you don't know what's around you. And then don't forget that tech pack that I mentioned earlier. Well, there's some other cool features like this camera up here that monitors for hand gestures. Some of them are pointless, I don't really get. So if I hold my hand up here, it'll highlight whatever I'm pointing at on the screen, but I still have to tap the screen. So that part I'm not quite clear on why it's here, but there's other stuff too. Like if I point up at these map lights after dark, it'll turn on for me, and same goes with the interior light. If I put my hand over on the passenger seat, it'll light up the spotlight on this side. That's kind of cool. And of course, there's all kinds of other stuff here. Panoramic sunroof, a self-parking system. There's all kinds of cool stuff. Heated steering wheel and seats. You do get a decent array of equipment, but one thing does stand out to me. There's no ventilated front seats in here. And the other thing that bothers me, well, you can't add them as a standalone option. You have to buy a package, and it's $4,000. You do get some other cool stuff like massaging front seats, but I really do think Mercedes should give you the option to just add ventilation if you want. And I do have to say, these seats, they are very comfortable and supportive, especially out here, long distance driving. And then I do have that comfort package. So not only is my seat heated, but this armrest is too. Yeah, okay, it's a little bougie, but I do dig that. And they also have a kinetic setup, so it's not massage, but it keeps a little bit of motion in your seat, which is great to keep you fresh and alert out on long trips. That is very cool. And then when it comes to the space inside, it's good, but not great. Some of it might surprise you. Now up here, it's nice and roomy, and from a styling perspective, I love that it's this kind of two-pod setup instead of a very driver-focused one. Again, this is a long-distance cruiser. You're going to be driving around with someone in the passenger seat. You don't want to feel cut off from them. But here's where it gets a little bit rough. Now, headroom up here with this sunroof, not great, but it's way worse in the back, and the same goes with the footwells. With the front seats positioned for someone tall like me to sit up here, it's kind of awkward to get your feet down into those footwells. It's not as comfortable as I would have liked, and the same goes with the trunk. It's really deep, but it's also really shallow. Don't get me wrong, I was still able to fit Patty, our cargo testing pedal car, in the back, but she only fits in one very specific way, and it's not exactly easy to drop her in there. She sits right at the trunk opening. I've been able to fit her in all kinds of cars, including the tiny Nissan Versa and that Honda Accord I mentioned earlier. Now, I do have to say, those cars are front-wheel drive, whereas this one is all-wheel drive. So there's a bunch of equipment like a differential in the back, and it does cut into the trunk floor a bit, but that part is a little disappointing. Again, lots of deep space. You could probably fit a couple sets of golf clubs back there, but not a ton of height. Anyways, those few complaints aside, I even think this E-Class is well priced. If you want this E450 I'm driving, it starts at 75 grand before freight and taxes. Not too bad. And then if you want the extras, like those driver aids I mentioned earlier, as well as all the other stuff I've talked about, well, it's going to set you back $86,000. And then if you want the massaging and ventilated front seats, you got to add that package that makes it 90 grand. But I still think there's some decent value here. And overall, I really like this car. To recap, I like the ride quality of this Mercedes E-Class sedan, the smooth straight six of this E450, and how well the advanced driver aids work. I don't like the cramped rear seats, the way you don't get full screen phone mirroring, or that ventilated front seats aren't standard. There are lots of other low-key cars out there, but the Mercedes E-Class sedan is about as agreeable as they get. It's so easy to live with to the point of feeling predictable, but it still manages to be incredibly pleasing in the process. It may not be all that exciting, but sometimes sensibility can be sexy too.